Hello and welcome back to AIBC Summit YouTube channel. We're here to bring you news on all things surrounding emerging tech. So if you are a fan of the space or you're looking to learn a little bit more, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe. Now joining me is Karla Denise Frias, who's going to give us a topic on taking a look at the dark side of COVID-19 and the boundaries that we have between public and private data. Karla, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
Especially in this digital era and this remote time, it's great to have you on the line. And I want to jump straight in and take a look at what we've seen in the past 6 weeks. Obviously, this shift of companies working from home and the use of platforms like Zoom, as we've seen. We did see a security vulnerability from Zoom in a few weeks ago. How was this able to happen?
Well, the security issues that were raised with respect to Zoom seem to have been existing long before this time. It's just that, as you said, with a sudden surge of users, it became easier for them to be exploited and to be highlighted. According to developers, when it comes to Windows devices, for example, just by injecting a UNC path injection, people are able to now access your user login details. So what happens is, just to briefly explain it, is that a URL is converted into a clickable link. And once a user clicks on it in the chat feature, Windows by default, the way that it's built, would immediately send your user login name and your password hash to the sender. And as we know, even if your password is hashed, there are tools which are readily available to be able to decode it. And it's the same thing that happens with programs suddenly being launched on your computer without your knowledge just by clicking that link. As far as Apple devices are concerned, it has been said by developers that there are bugs in the current platform which enables local attackers to actually inject malicious code into the Zoom installer, which would then enable that attacker to have root privileges on your Mac operating system. And this would enable him again to, download spyware, download malware, and all of these things are being done without your consent. What other issues? There are issues also raised with respect to access to your microphone and to your webcam. And again, it's just by injecting malicious code into Zoom, which would then give them access to Zoom's access rights towards these things. A lot of these things have been supposedly investigated already by Zoom, so we'll see how it goes from there.
And I think some of the interesting things about these the situation, and especially as we're talking from the emerging tech sector specifically, is it was a very digital era anyway, and there was a lot of companies that did have remote workers, but this whole process and this whole transition, what were some of the challenges that have come from privacy issues from seeing whole companies now have to shift from working remotely?
Well, because of the sudden shift in remote working, I would have to say that not a lot of companies were as prepared as they should have been. There is a lack of information and sufficient training because, as we know, working from home is a lot more casual. There is the issue of personal devices being used for office work, which again leads to questions on security because the personal device that you have could be used by other members of your household. And that's just a physical access issue. There's also the technical access issue wherein you would not have the same types of precautionary measures in your personal device as you would have on an office device. There's also the issue of backups, because what if you lose data? What are you supposed to do? And of course, GDPR compliance and all other compliances when it comes to data privacy laws. There are a lot of issues with suddenly just having to, work remotely without having to have sufficient time to prepare for it. So we'll see what happens too with that. It's like an experiment that's going on right now, to be honest.
Absolutely. And the IT teams in many of these corporations, I'm sure, have been working on overdrive to make this transition as fluid as possible.
For sure.
When we look, you mentioned data there and also being GDPR compliant. How can corporate and client data, how can this be ensured that it's protected? Are there any key steps that small to medium-sized companies can take to ensure that they're protected?
Honestly, at this point, I think we have to take a practical approach to it, have a written list of do's and don'ts to start with. Because the problem is people do not know what they're supposed to do and what not to do. So at least by having something written, there could be something that they would be able to refer to. And at the same time, I think if it's possible for the office to actually issue the devices, then that would be great. But knowing that it's not always practicable, I would think that the best option would be virtualization, meaning giving employees access through their personal devices to the home office, to the office network, for example. That way, whatever security measures the office has would immediately apply to that employee, although he is using his personal device. At this point, I think it is really, really imperative that employers are able to sufficiently inform their employees about the GDPR, about all these data privacy laws, because as we know, there are situations wherein the integrity of the data could be compromised, not just by unauthorized physical access, but technical access as well. So I think at this point, it would be very, very good for everyone to share information and to make sure that everyone knows what they're supposed to do. And at the same time, if they are in doubt, they shouldn't be afraid to ask. In case of doubt, just ask the data protection officer or ask the authorized officer as to the proper procedure to take in case there's any doubt in the current situation that they're in.
And that's a really good point as well, because as we all know, this is such an uncertain time for everyone. It definitely caught a lot of companies off guard as well. I think what's interesting when speaking to companies is they are suggesting that actually working remotely might be something which they incorporate more as a business model moving forward. And we're kind of hearing this across the board. Is this going to put more pressure on being compliant and GDPR compliant as well? Are you going to see a more surge in regulators having to come forward and just make sure that people are following this protocol?
I would think so, because suddenly right now, what's being highlighted is data privacy. Because as I've said earlier, working from home is an entirely different environment from working in the office. So in the office, you're always a bit, alarmed that you'd make a mistake and somebody would call you out immediately for it. And sure, that can be done sometimes. But as I've said, unless we are sufficiently prepared and we have the maturity to know that working from home is not any different from working in the office, then yes, I would think that the regulators would sooner or later be more active. They are active in the Philippines as far as data privacy is concerned, but I think that there'd be more moves towards compliance, considering that there is currently a surge in remote working, considering what's happening right now with the COVID crisis.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much, Karla, for your insights today. And we really look forward to having you join us for our digital conference in June, where we can hopefully share some more light on this and also catch up and see what developments have taken place. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, and to you. Well, that's all from myself and Karla, but we'd love to hear how you found this segment. So share your thoughts in the comments below and be sure to register for our digital summit in June.